Hello, my name's Nick Harris. I'm a children's book illustrator. Today we're going to be talking about Sketchbook Pro 6. But we'll start by using the Inkling, which is very compatible with Sketchbook Pro, which is just as well because Wacom's own software is a bit hideous. This is what I'm showing you here. It records the drawing that you do with the biro type pen, recorded by a sensor that you clip onto your sketchpad, and then you can play it back like this, which is quite nice, but it's not up to par for the quality of Wacom's hardware, I don't feel. But the good thing is you can open it in Sketchbook Pro. The drawing here looks horrible because Sketchbook Pro redraws it in whatever brush you have selected. And I have a fuzzy brush selected for this. If you select the pencil like that, close it, reopen it, it's redrawn it with the pencil. You might find that useful later. That's the only reason I'm showing you this, really. Back to Wacom's own software. This isn't Sketchbook Pro, don't worry. Just showing how you can scan through different layers of a drawing. You have to try it for yourself, really. That's not what we're here to talk about. This is Sketchbook Pro 6 with the drawing imported now. Just going through some of the menus. If you press spacebar, you've got controls to transform the canvas. This shows you the array of what's on offer here. Toolbar, lagoons, colour pickers, brush puck. That's the colour puck, which is obviously useful for colour, and this is the brush puck about to appear now. That's the brush puck. These are sort of floating pucks that you can use as controls when you're drawing and you don't want loads of stuff on the screen. The lagoon in the corner, that's what they call a lagoon, can be moved around to different corners using those controls there. This is kind of fairly indicative of how all the controls work. You kind of drag to the control you want. Colours there. See what I mean? You hover over and then drag out to, and it shows you the different options. All the controls work this way. It's very nice. It's got the very basic colours there. There's a much more comprehensive colour floating palette you can have out there. That's the tools there. Again, there's a lot more tools than just an offer there, but you can customize that if you want to look into that. See, that opens up the more comprehensive colour floating palette. All those colours there are ones that I have dropped in over time, and you can just change them and drop other colours on them and just customize it to your heart's content. You've got the normal sort of controls there for colour, but in the colour puck, this is what's nice. If you drag side to side, it affects the saturation, the colour that you've selected. Once you've got it there, side to side does saturation, up and down does luminance. So if you want to just vary the luminance or the saturation of a colour you're already using, and you haven't got anything else open but the puck, you can use that, which can be quite handy. The brush puck also does size and does opacity. I tend to have the opacity switched off, but this is the more comprehensive tools palette. As you can see, there's a fair array there. I've got all sorts in there now. That's basic pencil. That's got some basic controls for that. That's the one I'm used to using. You don't need a lot of control there. The pencil just works great on its own. But some of the other brushes have a lot more controls. So you can customize them to your heart's content. All these here, for instance, size response to pressure. You can randomize size if it's a texture or something like that you've made. You can now randomize hue, which is very handy if you want a bit more mottled effect. I'll use it quite a lot in the drawing I'm going to be doing. And you can see there's just a lot more controls, and you can make your own brushes by capturing. You can do stamps, but I tend to use it to make more texture brushes. And then you hear the brush library. You begin to see the quite intimidating array of brushes that you can have, and you can add to this. You can. I'm not sure if there's a limit to how much you can expand it. I've already added at least 2 categories that I'm filled up fairly already. But there's a new range of synthetic brushes that are really smeary and blobby and oily that weren't here before, and you might want to have a good play with those. It doesn't really suit my style, so I won't really be playing with those today, although I do use, there's some blenders that we'll get to in a minute that are much more smeary as well. It's a much more natural media look you can get with Sketchbook Pro now. I love it for the tools that were there before, but adding these just makes it more attractive to me. Those are some brushes I've made myself. Those are some basic chains that I was using on a book project that I just completed. And that's more do-it-yourself brushes, just where I've taken their brushes and tweaked the settings, and to keep them I've made a custom brush, but then also I've made my own stamps, like that's a leaf stamp there. Yeah, I'll be using that in the picture we'll be looking at. And then you've got splatter, and then you've got the smudgy brushes at the end there. They're very responsive. All the brushes in Sketchbook Pro are very responsive. It's one of the things I love about it. Much more so than almost any other program. Even ArtRage, which I also love. ArtRage works in a different way. Gives a different feel. Here we are, back with the transform park. As I said, hold spacebar to get to that. If my speaking does sound a bit disjointed, it's because I normally talk as I'm doing this, but because it's such a long, it's about 20 hours of drawing coming up in this, and so I've gone back to do a voiceover over it, so I try to remember what I did as I do it, even though I've written a bit of a script. So anyway, we've got the drawing in now, and this is just me refining it a bit. And the idea, given to me by Ian Dean, well, commissioned by Ian Dean from ImagineFX, was to do a sort of goblin space project. I'd better just mention at the moment that I'm using rulers here. They're very handy for setting up perspective grids. And there's also a ellipse tool that you can bring out. And they've got easy to use controls, and they are guides. Once you've got them there, the tool you're using will be guided by that. It won't draw anywhere else. So if you want to draw anywhere else, then you have to turn them off again. So back to the idea, Ian's idea, which is great, is to have Goblin Space Program being run using recycled equipment, so at a scrapyard basically. So if you want to know what to get up to, Goblins running a scrapyard, deciding to expand their horizons by going to different planets. So my original idea, based on the little sketch, I haven't done a lot of thumbnailing on this, mostly because of time, although a lot of people would say that doesn't save time, not doing the thumbnailing. But in my case, it usually does. It's just the way my particular mind works. So working on a drawing on one layer and set to multiply, I will block in colours behind on layers behind. See how many times I can say the word behind in one sentence. Now, this is how I'm originally thinking of the goblins, but they're a bit, I don't know, I'm just not happy with the way he's going. The pose isn't too bad. The idea is he's supposed to be not the most intelligent, and he stood a little too close in lighting the blue touch paper to set off the rocket, because it's a very basic rocket. It works more or less like a firework. And he's going to be a bit singed, and the rocket won't even have taken off, kind of adding insult to injury. A silly idea, but then it kind of goes with the whole idea to me. I'm not saying that I think Ian's idea is lovely. I love silly ideas, but as you can see, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with this kind of going somewhere between a frog and, and an ape, and not looking like a goblin at all. Although we have quite a range of what goblins can look like. That's quite a handy thing you can do. You can select areas and then just transform them, like you can in Photoshop and various other programs. But it's nice to have that. You can transform a layer, anything on a layer, by holding down V. I'm sat at a desktop using this, so you can get Sketchbook to go on mobile devices. I haven't got a mobile device because it's not really applicable to me. I spend all day, every day sat at my desk. I wouldn't get to use it. Doesn't mean I don't want one, but I can't justify buying one just yet. So now you see the character is beginning to develop in a slightly different way. Thinking scrapyard, we are thinking dungarees. I was thinking a woolly hat because that's the kind of thing that would singe quite well. So he's leaning away, having stood too close. Leaning away isn't quite going to save him, so he's got singed. Now I block in on another layer. As you see, the layers are over on the right. All these things can be closed. You can make everything disappear by pressing the tab button and clear the screen, but I find they don't really get in the way of what I'm doing, so I tend to leave them there, and I'm always going to them a lot, so I've left the perspective grid hanging around for the moment, so it keeps things kind of in some sort of order. Thought it would be a good idea to have the moon on view because it helps explain what they're trying to do there. That's a textural brush. Most of these brushes come loaded with the software. Using it on the ground and then transforming it to give a feeling of perspective. Otherwise it'd be look a little too flat and square on. Wouldn't get that feeling of the texture going away. Knowing me, it'll get lost later on. I'll paint over it. Now what I've done now is slapped a layer set to multiply and flood filled it with a shadow colour. And then you can paint back into it and affect all sorts of lighting. It was a tip I picked up from a Photoshop Wow book, but it'll work in just about any software that does layers, and particularly layers that you can have layer blending modes on. This layer is set to multiply, as I mentioned already. And you can use, I've used a sort of light purplish colour for the shadow, and then painted back into the solid objects with a slightly yellow tinted colour, but cut the sky away with the eraser because I want that to be a cleaner blue. I constantly go back and redraw bits and tweak and fiddle, and this is why by the end of this, I think it's about 45-50 minutes of video that you've got to endure me prattling on. In real time, that is between about 18-20 hours of real time. That's how slow I am. Doing a bit of rendering on the face just to give it some form. Working with shadows, colours all over the shop. Really, I make it up as I go along. Just like I'm making the drawing up as I go along. I've got a vague idea. But it's not really refined. It's not really. I don't think it's a not particularly strong idea. I'm not totally happy with it. I think there's more potential in this than what I'm doing. As you see, when you can switch the light on and off to see how it goes. I tend to switch it off when I want to get just the modelling of the colours and the values, and then turn it back on. But it's constant checking. It's like a chef doing a recipe. Constantly check the taste. With this, constantly check the lighting and the colour, like you would with a real painting, where you have to step back to see what you're doing. You zoom in and out. It's very easy to get bogged down in little bits. I do it all the time. But where's the fun if you don't do that? See, constantly redrawing. the tools are very responsive. All this stuff just responds really nicely. Yes, he's not particularly goblin-y, I have to admit. The ears are about the only bit that are goblin-y. I haven't gone little green men. I've gone more kind of morphed humans, really. Now, I have to say, if he was living next to me, I'd be a bit worried that he was a human or not. Right. Expanding the silliness, I started to think, well, how would they power this rocket? And methane is a quite explosive gas. And what's a good source of methane? Methane, can't say it even. Methane, cows. So they have intelligently sort of strapping a batch of cows to their rocket, pointing their bums down, and hoping that if they light it, then that's going to be enough to launch them to the moon. Assuming the moon is their target, which it's supposed to be, because that's why I put it in the picture, as I mentioned earlier. That's using my foliage brush. I made a little small stamp. It's not the best thing in the world. It could do with a little bit of refinement, but it'll do for now. I'm sure you can do better. You just draw a little shape of some leaves, capture it, having ticked that it will also rotate as well, and then play with the settings that I showed you before, the brush properties, where you can have randomness of rotation and stuff like that, and you can find quite simple stamps become very effective. Wondering about putting a crane in, but I was thinking, well, if it was being held by the crane, it's more likely to pull the crane over. They probably wouldn't think of using that. I haven't decided what to have the rockets supported on yet, but I think it'll probably be piles of bricks, something totally inadequate. Again, just silliness. Hello, I seem to have stopped here. No, I've spoken up again. See, turn the lighting off again, see what I'm doing. Refining his hands a bit. Well, if you could call that hand refined. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a hand model. Now, that's a handy little tool that I haven't shown you before. What you saw there was, if you go to Image and look down, you will see a thing called Adjust. And it sounds like it would adjust the whole image, but no. It would select a layer, go to that, go to Image, Adjust, and you now have controls to do hue, saturation, contrast, that kind of stuff, which can be very handy. I've said it in the magazine, the written part of the magazine article supporting this workshop. Go and track down Bobby Chew's workshop, where it's not a workshop, sorry, his vidcap of his creation of the box image that goes with Sketchbook Pro. So little critters, all different array of colours climbing out of a hole, a paint box hole, and he shows how he creates that. And he uses, his technique is quite interesting. He does things in quite low contrast and then beefs them up using those controls, the image adjust, and it works really well. I mean, I've got great admiration for Bobby Chew. Went to see him speak in London at the end of last year, November 4th, I think it was. Fantastic, inspirational chap, and it's great vidcap. You'll get probably more information from that than you will from listening to my prattle. This is that hat that I talked to you about, that I'm thinking about having a little bit frayed, maybe bits on fire. As you see, constantly playing with colour. Green hat, it's kind of, thinking scrapyard. I'm in the UK, this is kind of what the scrapyards I've been to, this is the kind of thing the people I go to are wearing. String vests, woolly hats. Now, Now, I'm not being scrapyardist when I say that. That's just the people I've encountered so far. They're very nice people. Starting to fiddle with the rocket a bit. Give it a bit more solidity, volume. Lighting is coming from the right. You have to decide, whatever you're doing, if you're doing a scene like this, or some sort of a scene, decide on your main light source. I've got light coming from the right. The moon is in the sky. You know how sometimes when it's still light, you can see the moon in the sky. The sun is still up, but the moon is up there. It's one of those days. That's what I'm aiming at. A sort of sun going down, yellow glow, but the moon is in the sky. So the main light source is coming from the right and will be the sun fairly low in the sky. Just adding bits and pieces here and there as I think about them. This is how I tend to work. As things occur to me, I quickly, well, when I say quickly for me, do them, draw them in. I should point out that this is probably about 20 or 30 times speeded up. It'd be nice to be able to work this fast. Of course, I might be setting fire to my Wacom if I did that. I don't think they're meant to be used at that sort of speed. My tip would be gone in no time. Particularly if what I hear about the latest ones is true. I've got a Wacom Intuos 3. I am working on a Windows machine, running Windows 7 Home Premium. And I've got a Wacom Intuos 3. It's an A5, and contrary to every bit of advice you'll hear, I'm sat working with it on my lap just because I've got another system that occupies too much desk space to allow me to work. Otherwise, I keep my work machine separate from the internet to try and protect it from getting jiggered by nasty hackers and stuff like that, or viruses going around on the internet. I know it'll get got one way or another sooner or later, but so far it's been reasonably successful in protecting it. Still fiddling away with this chap. This is what I do. Fiddle, 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 fiddle. But he's getting a bit more volume to him, a bit more rounded, a little bit more convincing. Still not happy. There's going to be a problem. The composition isn't worked out well enough. His hand, I framed his head quite nicely in the archway, which I was thinking about. But where his hand is leaning away, where his hand is in the blue touch paper, it's going to be fiddly to get it to work. So it's not conflicting with all the detail of the rocket and that in the background. When I say detail, it's not very detailed, but it's just not going to, the composition isn't very strong yet. The idea is not great, the composition isn't strong. Apart from that, it's wonderful. Best thing I've ever done. Dungaree madness here. More fiddling with the hat. I'm hopping about all over the thing. See, I do get bound up in doing little detaily bits when I should be doing the whole. Turning light on and off as needed, and to check. It's pretty dark, isn't it? I'm going to have to lighten this. Yes, little details that get carried away with little ineffectual details like a hole in his knee of his dungarees. You'll notice I've put the shadow of the rocket on the arch there to try and make the lighting more convincing, and place the rocket in space within the courtyard of the scrapyard. I started marking out a few bits and pieces of scrap behind, which most of the pictures I looked at when I googled scrapyard were squash cars. Lots of squash cars everywhere. Obviously there's other scrap around, but I thought that would make it immediately obvious where I was setting this. Go if it's a slightly obscure idea like this, then you've got to make it as obvious as you can. There, the piles of bricks are appearing now. They're all very scrappy, rough stuff. It's going to have a metal flange. I can't remember who it was said they loved the word flange, but it is a nice word. But with a totally unsuitable wooden portion above it. They don't seem to have thought through the flames and wood scenario possibly not being the best combination. Not if you want the rocket to be intact to get it out of the atmosphere anyway. You can turn off rotation if you don't want rotation as part of the controls in the transform puck. Remember, spacebar, and then the little puck appears and you can drag around or scale or rotate. So you're fiddling with lighting now, starting to block in some body colour for the moo cows. That might be a problem because the browns, they're going to blend in with the rocket a bit. Now what I'm doing there is I've got colour variability set to my brush, and I'm just painting with one colour, but it's coming out in those slight variations, adding a bit of life to the colour in the brickwork, which could be a bit bland. So yes, it's lifted it. I know it's a bit too bright at the moment. It's not convincing as brickwork, but now I've actually started thinking about adding some more figures, and the idea has changed from the chap being burnt by the standing too close to actually the thrusters being fitted the wrong way round, and instead of the rocket taking off, it blowing the astronauts out of the top of the rocket, who obviously aren't best pleased. Still not happy about the pose of the chap. Well, it's not the pose so much, it's the position of the chap at the front within the composition. It's just not quite working. Now I don't know. It looks like he's trying to sneak away now. That isn't what it's supposed to look like. So anyway, I'm adding some bodies of 3 more goblins, or very ugly men, whichever we want to think they are. One splattered on the floor, sitting just behind the man, and 2 in the background, that who I'm just doing the legs off now, and the other one draped over the bridge. I'll have to make it obvious with some smoke coming out the top of that. Make it look more burnt. Just blocking in his booties. There we are, told you about the smoke. It's not great, but it's indicated anyway. Yes, I haven't got any piped music. You have to have me going pum 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 pum. To make it obvious that they're astronauts, I will actually have them have sort of astronauty suits. I'm not going for something very goblin-y. I'm going for, as I said, you have to make it with an obscure idea like this. You have to make it rather obvious. So I've tried to make that obvious by giving them suits that do look rather like astronaut suits. Building up a bit of value in that in his face, and his legs and suit, and quite like the pose of this one. Not quite sure what we're going to do with his hand yet. Notice every now and again that they notice the colour puck down at the bottom right corner, flicking between the colours as I change them. Sorry, I just bashed the microphone there. I don't know, maybe you enjoyed that. That's probably the most exciting thing that's happened so far. When the timer pops up, it's because I work from home, get quite a lot of interruptions, so I have to pause this thing every now and again. I've got a beloved wife who pops in and talks to me about urgent things like dinner, things like that. Well, I think it's urgent. Yeah, seemed smouldering. Yeah, I might go with that. I'm not sure. Oh dear, no, the smoulder is conflicting with that dink in the flange. Oh, I got to say flange again. So that might have to change. Block in some more colour on his boot, just make him clearer. No, I'm still not happy with this character at the front. I think now I feel a change coming on. Ooh. No, not that. That's not the change. No, that's just me adding bits of detail and stuff. Yeah, I'd also do the positioning of him as well. He's sort of him and the bricks and the smoke and stuff. That's not quite working either. I'm adding more texture and light to the bottom. Nitpicking details now. Shouldn't be doing this. I quite like the way the hat looks, even without bits burning on it. Painty, 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 painty. You'll notice me a lot of time diving and switching layers on and off just to check I'm working on the right layer. In the Bobby Chu video that I've recommended you go find, it does point out he's got a very nice way of marking layers, which you'll see you can actually draw a reminder rather than just writing what the layer is or looking at a tiny representation of what is on the layer. You can draw a reminder in there. You just clear the layer and draw in it. It's a great idea. And just do that with a few layers here and there as marker layers, and it'll help you keep tabs on what you're doing, particularly if, like me, you're a bit of a layer whore and you have loads and loads open. I add them like confetti. So you don't want to invite me to a wedding? Nah, now you see. Oh, let's do this. Have a jig around. Now, one of the things missing, I still think, from Sketchbook Pro is the ability to group layers. Unless I've missed something, you still can't do that. So when I want to change something like this, you can, using Control V, you can do each layer individually. But then it's a question of trying to match them up with the moving around, which can be a bit fiddly. It would be nicer if you could just group them and do that. So, because it's just so nice to paint in it anyway, I just collapse the layers, like the drawing and the tone and the body colour, etc. We're on different layers for those two characters. But to make sure I transformed all the things accurately to each other, I merged them and then transformed them, and then just make new layers to paint over the top. I mean, I'm still not happy with the placement of the one there. The complication when I make a change like this is that, excuse me, that then I have to also remember how I do the lighting on one layer, or in this particular one it's on two layers, I think. Two layers of one slightly purpley, one slightly bluey, set to multiply, and then you cut away the light areas. Well, of course, when you move something like that, then you have to patch up or the dark areas, which is where it comes in very handy if you've saved the colour of your shadow and your light colour in your swatches, which I have done. The purple on the right there, second row down, that's the shadow colour I've been using. That's the main shadow colour. and then a yellow from a bit further down is the light colour for the solid objects in there. I've redrawn that a little bit because that was particularly naff. I'm good at naff drawing, do it a lot. The thing is, make mistakes as you go along, and then just spot them and correct them. And hopefully over time you'll make less mistakes and don't have so much correcting to do. In this I'm changing things all the time because I didn't formulate a really concrete idea from the start, and I think this idea I'm doing now is far better than how I started. Still not the best idea I've ever used, but it's better than it was. Yes, that cow's head was a bit big. Again, selected it, then used V. Well, no, when you select it, you don't have to use V. It just automatically, when you hover over the selection, allows you to transform it. You have the same controls as you do if you were using V. It's a bit dark behind the rocket. I want to pick it out a bit, so I've lightened that wall very slightly. I do tend to get a bit dark. I have dark thoughts. Not like that, just tonally dark thoughts. Fiddle, 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 darken, darken, darken. Move the moon up a bit, because something that you may not have spotted in all the shenanigans going on at breakneck speed was that I moved the whole composition down slightly. And rather than moving all the layers, I did it the other way by cropping a bit off the bottom using image canvas size. Lopped about 200 pixels off the bottom and then added them to the top with another image size thing, which effectively just moved the whole composition down, gave me more space, but gave more the feeling of that the rocket could go into the sky. I felt that just made it stronger. I've just added tone to some of the brickwork on a layer set to multiply. One I've already got open. And now I think I've decided what to do with his hand. I'm just going to have it rather tensely on the floor, tucked under his leg, because his knee. I don't want it interfering with the flow of his knee. Keep going. The cows I'm finding the cows quite awkward. That looks a bit rude. I think we'll have to change that. I wanted to make sure it's cow. Obviously it's cows and not bulls, so I will be putting udders in. Now the nose cap looks a bit like a lollipop, or a traffic cone. Yes, no, that does look, yes. Those udders aren't quite right at all. They look too much like breasts. So they'll have to go. Definitely. And in fact, there they go now. That's better. And I said about that brown not working, to not standing out enough against the browns of the rocket. So I've decided to make them more sort of Frisian coloured, sort of black and white patterns. Terribly sorry. Makes them more of a silhouette then, much stronger contrast, particularly as the background is so dark. I mean, given time, I will pick all sorts of things out. Now I've slapped in, because I wanted to warm it slightly, I've slapped in a yellowy tone over the background. It kind of unifies things when you do things like that. As long as you don't make it too dark, it looks a bit dark at the moment, but I will lighten the bits I want to pick out, like I'm doing now. You can see I'm lightening his, and it helps his form as well. Makes him seem to have a bit more of a sheen to his suit. He doesn't look happy, which is good. I don't want him to look happy. I've darkened the sky as well, because I want there to be more of a sort of glow coming from the right hand side, and the sky was a bit kind of flat and bland, but it's also a bit bright now, so I will do what I told you about before with the overlay I've done on that, and go to Image, Adjust, and just tone down the saturation a bit on that. In the old days I just would have repainted it with a slightly more muted colour. It's just a quicker way of doing it. Adding some hints of, it's not really details, but it's some sort of interest, so it describes a little bit what's going on in the background. Maybe some windows or some kind of hut thing there. Just trying to make it more convincingly your typical scrapyard that you might come across in the UK anyway. And I wanted some sort of mizzen hut or something up there, a corrugated hut, some sort of shape to echo the arch, and that just helped the composition on that side. Oh, I've added a tiny bit of text. You can do text in Sketchbook Pro 6, but because I wanted it with a slight curve on, I did it in Draw Plus 15 I've got, because you can transform that with an envelope, and I wanted a slight curve. You can transform sort of laterally and vertically in Sketchbook Pro 6, but you can't do curves in that yet. You'd have to use one of the blur brushes or something. That would be kind of counterproductive to making the text legible. I don't miss not having it in Sketchbook Pro 6. I always think text and painting and drawing, unless you're a sign writer, typographer, or doing something like that, is sort of separate things really. And you can quite easily do things in a program like Draw Plus and then save it out as a ping, add image, and I've got it set so it comes in on a separate layer, and then you can move it, transform it to fit. What I do to make sure it's going to fit is in the Draw Plus, which is just a vector program, I open up a copy of the image so that I know what I'm matching it to. The idea is that mission control will be like a transit van cab under the arch there. Oh, it's not a transit. I'm not referencing anything particularly, so it won't be exactly an accurate transit van, but that sort of cab thing. I don't want people come back saying, "Well, you haven't quite got the light fittings right for that." This is a silly image. It's not really there to be criticised on details of the cars and whether the headlamp fittings are quite right. But feel free to do that if that's what floats your boat, but doing a bit of rim lighting here and there to pick things out, like I said I would. Well, sorry about that, a bit of a gap there. I had some problems with my video capture software, not particularly liking my system. So I had a bit of wrestling with that for a bit. But in the meantime I've been getting on with it, and this is where I am now. I hope you can see I've beefed it up a little bit more. I've added bits of grass around here. That was using this particular brush here. You can see there's a stamp up there. Hang on, if I change the colour, hopefully it'll show up better. There we are. So it's good how it's reflected even in the small thing at the top. The colour is reflected. The representation of the brush you are using, the colour is accurate. So that's my brush stamp that I made. See, it's that shape there. Back to the grass. I think I've got a secondary, that's a sort of tufty thing I did as well. I did one which was Fir Trees. That was for the other project, that's not for this one. Got various brushes I've done. That's not right. I'd never use that. That's not very successful, that one. I can't remember what I did that one for. Kind of tufty thing. That's a sort of curly texture brush. You just make marks and play with it. That's more of a pattern. Leaves, again, not very successful. I'll probably get rid of that one. You can do more regular shapes like that if you want to do a pattern. I had to do a castle, and there was that's not for crenellation. That's for just some carved pattern on the wall that was a bit tedious to draw, so I did it that way. And a wavy line. Again, with a little tweaking, you can do things like that. And that is a copy of a brush that actually came with the program, and I just like to use it. So that's sort of pebbles, brickwork, except they're a bit short for what I'm doing today, so not really any good for that. Anyhow, so that was the grass brush. I'll show you the settings. At least I would if I'd see. So I've got them fairly responsive to size. Opacity is fairly consistent, it doesn't vary a lot. Slight hue variation, a little bit of saturation variation. Not too important, just to keep it a little bit more alive than flat, which can make it look very dead. The rotation, that was just because of the way I drew it. I didn't draw it the right way around, but then you can rotate it. It needed rotating just above 90 degrees to make it square to the ground, which is what I wanted it. Space randomize, rotation randomize, just gives it a little bit more life again. Oh, yes, that's a happy accident, as well as the ellipse and the ruler, all which have controls like these. You just drag round, that turns it off. That takes it to the center, double click, it takes it to the center. You also have French curve. You have a set of different French curves you can use. I never really used French curves in the real world, so I haven't really started using these yet, but I can see how they may become very useful to me if I get the hang of them, because you can scale them all, you can rotate them all, you can do all these things. That's just a different one, isn't it? Drag it where you want it. I hope this is showing up on your screen because it's fairly faint. Anyhow, you also have horizontal symmetry and or vertical symmetry. I haven't shown you yet. Hang on, I will make another layer to do this one because I don't particularly want this. I'll use a light colour. You have, that is a straight line tool. Does it like that? Yeah. This takes a little bit of getting used to, because it's a bit like towing a curve behind you. It's this smooths out curves, but you don't get a lot of, you lose the pressure response. So I'll make that a bit lighter still. See, you can get very smooth curves, but again, has certain applications. I'm not really in this. I don't really want it for this. You have some shapes, rectangle and circle. If you actually want circle, a more regular circle than a hand drawn one, you've got that. Let's get the colours back. That turns layers on and off. That's tools on and off. I haven't looked at, because it's something I don't use. You have a Copic library as well. The markers, all the different ranges of colours, which you may find very useful. I haven't used them really yet myself, because again, I don't use them in the real world. And then to clear the layer, you can use that button, clear, so it's all marked, or you can press backspace. That clears any layer. Anyway, wandered way off track, trying to keep you up to speed with what's in here. I have done bits of grass here and there. I've bolstered that foliage a little more so that it sticks out more, which allows me to put that into shadow, which frames the composition better. I've turned his hat red because being green it was losing it against the tones of the car. That just pops it forward a little bit, unless you're colourblind, in which case that was probably a waste of time on my part. I've given the cows little seat belts, otherwise they'd just fall off. I mean, they're not totally stupid, these goblins. They do have a little bit of practicality. I need to soften that a bit. That's too hard, that curve there. Really makes it pop forward. I've added a bit of edge here and there just to crisp things up. And lastly, you can see I've beefed up the texture here a bit at the front to bring it forward and lightened it slightly so that it balances better the colours there to the colours here. It brings him forward more. And to do that, I made a couple of new brushes, which is that one and that one. They're not great, they could do with work, but they are just, these are effectively the stamp. I just did some dotty marks, then what I did was you go to capture, you click that, and then you scale the brush size so it covers your stamp, and that's it. And that makes it there, and then you tweak it. You tweak the settings till you get the marks that you want. It's as easy as that. Lovely. So anyway, we're getting closer now. There's a few bits and pieces I still need to do. See, that's the, I've done a few highlighty bits. I'll do a little bit more of that. Oh no, I've left it on circles and the wrong colour, but apart from that, perfect. That's freehand, that's where I spend most of my time. That one will do, that layer. No, that's already had a go there, haven't I? That's why, yeah. Put a few bulges here and there. Make it feel like it's got a little bit of a give in it, like you would expect a cow's tummy to have. Oop, far too big. Just there. Now, just making it go round. That's a bit hard. That's on this layer, on the base layer. A smudge brush there. I mean, it's the pattern on a Frisian is actually quite harsh, but I don't particularly, that didn't look very nice there. Back to highlighting. In fact, what we should have there is a few more of those potentially embarrassing others. I'm kind of trying to avoid doing those because I nearly got into trouble last time. Let's make that the drawing layer, shall we? And I can peasy easy, that's better. Well, had to be better than the last one I did. as you see, whereas before I had 110 layers, no, I didn't have that many, but I did have quite a lot. Now I only have about 4 because once I get to a certain stage, it's just sensible to flatten. When you sort of, it's going to save you more time to do it that way. Even I have common sense now and again. You have to make the most of it, but just now and again. We are now using this, remember, I want a lighter tone, slide up, a bit more, slide up some more, put a little bit of glint there, that'll do. I'll probably have to stop. I'm actually running out of time because I've got to send this off soon. So I'm not going to do a lot more on this. Glints here and there just to make it pick out some interesting shapes. And I will actually, that's merge all. See, as I said before, same thing applies. You click, left click, and then all these options pop up, and you customize all these within the menus. Merge all, flatten it all. So now down to one layer instantly. Another thing that's nice about Sketchbook Pro is it doesn't create huge files, even when you've got quite a lot of layers. I used to use Painter, and the files used to just get so unwieldy. But this somehow manages to cope with them without them getting massive. Which then also helps avoid crashes, of course. Not that Painter ever crashed on me. Sketchbook Pro is a lovely, easy to use software. It's not overcomplicated. It's got a ton of power, but as I said, it's not going to replace Photoshop. If you do loads of Photoshoppy type things, it's not going to replace that. It's not meant to. It's just a fabulous drawing program. But with the addition of, well, you've seen the huge raft of brushes, and it's had layer blending modes for a little time now. Things like that make all the difference to what you can achieve in it. You can do really complex lighting now by building up layers. That's the way I tend to do it in any software. I mean, I try to build up layers, and then you get lovely nuances and subtleties, which I hope you would agree, this is looking much more painterly than you would have expected from if you hadn't tried Sketchbook Pro but sort of heard a bit about it, because a lot of designers use it because it's perfect for designers as well. Character designers, car designers, because it's just so immediate. All I could say is just give it a try. For goodness sake, it's only about £50. That's UK money. Full program, £50. How can you go wrong? Anyhow, I'm going to carry on tweaking this a little bit more, but I'm not going to carry on capturing it. You can get the finished image on the disk that goes with ImagineFX, Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and go play with Sketchbook Pro. Give it a try. Right, bye for now.